So a few months ago, my friends over at Harlowe reached out and asked if I wanted to give their Sol 40 light a test run. It's like a 11-inch disc light that's super portable. The battery is set up into the grip of the light, and you can really take it just about anywhere you want to. So with that in mind, I thought I would hit the streets and photograph people doing portraits on the streets of Soho. And one of the ways that I wanted to do this was by utilizing a really small camera with autofocus. So I used my Leica Q. This is the OG Leica Q from 2015. I've had this thing for a long time and it still works flawlessly. I do have a diffusion filter on the front of here, which I've been using to bring down some of the sharpness on the photos. But I think ultimately it's just been a phenomenal camera for this project, and having autofocus rather than rangefinder focus while also trying to hold a reflector and pay attention to the light and posing of somebody, it makes life a little bit easier. When it comes to the light itself, I mounted it on a Cardellini clamp with a grip head, and then from there you can move it from signpost to signpost around the city and quickly pick it up, put it down, and make photographs like basically anywhere. Anywhere you can find a signpost, you can make a portrait. Because the light is only 40 watts, you have to be able to find a place where it's dark enough or shady enough to be able to light your subject, particularly by putting it really close to somebody. I've been setting it just off camera and then using a silver reflector to bounce light back into their eyes, which has been a really nice setup. And for the most part, it's been really good. Even during high noon time, if I can find some place in shade, which in New York is not hard, I can still make some beautiful portraits. The whole project started by just setting up a sign out there with me in Soho, and it basically just said free portraits. And I kind of just stood there and waited for people to come through. On occasion, I would jump out and try to grab somebody and photograph them if I thought their look was really interesting. And that worked out really, really well. Within the first day, I had photographed more than 10 people. Within the first week, we had photographed more than 100 people. I took a little bit of a break because it was so cold outside, and it seemed like torture trying to ask people to stand for a portrait in freezing cold temperatures. But I have gone back out now since it's warmed up a little bit here in New York City, and we're right around 300 people have been photographed now. So it's a really exciting project, and it's really taken off, and it seems like everybody I showed the project to really, really likes it.
Ooh, those are nice. Like the finish of the photo is super cool.
Yeah.
Oh, these are nice. Oh, I like these a lot actually.
So I thought it would be fun to look at some of my favorite photographs from the project so far, and maybe talk about how we came to get the particular photo. So one of the first photographs that I was able to get, like literally in the first day I was doing this project, was a shot of Tony Hawk. He was walking down the street coming from an event just up the road, and he had a skateboard with him, and I was like, Tony, Tony, Tony! You know, being somebody who grew up skateboarding in the 90s and the 2000s, I was just absolutely starstruck. So I stopped and asked him to make a portrait. I think he expected that we were going to do a selfie, and then I kind of pointed to the light, and I was like, I've got a light set up. I'd really love to make a portrait of you. And he was like, oh, this is legit. Okay. So I did a portrait. He was really nice. He did a couple different poses, and this is the one showing off his board, which I really, really liked. If you spend any time in Soho or on Instagram, you probably know Mr. Confidence. He came through for a portrait pretty quickly into the start of my project, and I was really grateful for that. I really loved how this one came together. So this is shooting the Leica Q at 1.7, so pretty close to people, as well as like a really shallow depth of field, so being able to kind of like isolate them despite being on a 28mm lens. I really loved that he had this tan shirt on, and it went really nicely against the greens in the background. And then in addition to that, I really loved the little shine you get off of his ring as well as his bracelet. Another well-known face around the New York area, especially if you're into film photography. I did this portrait. This is actually in a different location because I was trying to get out earlier in the day and photograph more. And so this is over by the Apple store here in Soho. And I thought this one just came out really nice. We had done a couple photos where you just kind of like looked at the camera and some basic ones, and I was kind of like, what if you like lean in and you just peek over your glasses? Like, what would that look like? And I think that with the white t-shirt and the blue beanie, we got the taxi going by, it just feels so New York to me. I really love this one. This is probably one of my favorites from the set. This person showed up, and we did like some of the standard photos, so just kind of like chilling, and and then I was like, oh, you have the braids. Like, what would it be like if you were like pulling on the braids and looking into the camera? And then at one point they like did the eyes closed and then that little like teeth showing. I thought it was phenomenal, and I think especially with the colors and the way the buildings are kind of like pointing towards her, I thought it just came together beautifully, and it's definitely one of my favorite photos from the set. This is another one of my favorites. Same thing. We were doing a bunch of different poses and stuff, and I think I was just like, "Do you want to do something goofy? Like, do you want to try to do something that's like a little silly and see how that comes together?" He stuck out his tongue, and I think the tongue with the yellow glasses and then the blue in the sky and the blue in his shirt just came together beautifully. So this photo is actually one where I saw somebody walking past, and I just knew that I had to try to stop them. So I saw this guy walking past in the green. He had the flowers put together, and then like all of the flowers that were on his jacket. And I stopped him, and he was interested, but he said that he didn't let people photograph him. So he said that if there was a way that I could photograph him and still keep it anonymous, that he'd be down for that. So we kind of did some ideas like peeking around the flowers, and this one ended up being my favorite one, where you just see like this glimmer of his eye just sitting behind the flowers. And I thought it came together so beautifully because you can also see like there's that little bit of an arch that comes out from the tree in the background, and it's kind of mimicked in this purple flower in the foreground too, and I really loved that. This is another one where I kind of like flagged somebody down. This girl was on her way to an event right around Halloween, and she had this face paint on, and I just thought it was phenomenal. So I set up the light and asked her to pose, kind of like leaned forward on her bike like that. I also have like a full body shot, which I think is neat, but being able to isolate her on here, I thought was just fantastic. I thought it was such a beautiful photo. This is a local artist. I think he hangs out a lot in Washington Square Park, but he was coming through, like biking through Soho, and I managed to see him, and he was really interested in what I was doing. And I thought he had such beautiful colors on, and he has so much personality. We did a bunch of photos, like just regular photos of him, and we're like flipping through some of the photos. And at one point, he's like, "Can I bring out my Donald Duck?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So he pulls out his Donald Duck, and like his expression just just killed it. I thought it, like the excitement in his face. You can see like this little bit of chipping around his fingernails, which I thought was really pretty. Um, yeah, just the excitement. And then you can see that little glimmer of the white foam core that I was holding up as a bounce in his eyes. I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, I love it. This is a girl that was walking by, and I think she and her friends actually stopped to see about getting a photograph. And she just had so much attitude that I absolutely loved it. We did a bunch of photos with her kind of like posing in different ways, holding her blunt, not holding it, and then different angles on her face. And I think like this one with it kind of like falling out of her mouth, but then also getting this like Eiffel Tower earring in there. And then this like fur coat with these leathers and these different textures coming together. I thought it came together really nicely. This is another random encounter. I just absolutely loved the colors and especially his hair. So I did a couple different photos and really just kind of like set on the one where he's staring right down the camera. And I think like the angle of his face and the beauty in his hair against that purple, and purple's my favorite color. So I thought that together came together really, really good. Definitely another one of my favorites. This is another kind of like superstar here in New York City, Maddie, and he drives around on his bikes and has his two dogs with him, and then the dogs howl when the fire trucks go by. So I caught him going by one day, and I was like, "Maddie, Maddie, Maddie," and he stopped and then parked the bike right here, and we were able to make a photograph of him. And I love it. I think it's so much fun. The two dogs just like hanging out, like, what is going on? I made this portrait just before closing up in the evening. I usually like to like call it quits around blue hour or like right towards the end of blue hour because I think that's when they look really beautiful. But this day I was kind of like pushing it, and I stayed out a little bit later. The street lights came on, the sky is completely dark, and this guy came up with his guitar, and I was like, oh, we did a couple of portraits like without the guitar, and then I was like, would you mind having your guitar in the photo? He did a couple where it like looked like he was playing it, and then I was like, what if you just like set it on your shoulder? And we did a couple photos like from a few different angles, and I thought this one came out really nice. So local street photographer here, G Moon, really great guy. He came through, and this is another one of those like late evenings. So this is like right before I was wrapping up again, blue hour, and he just posed in front of the camera with his little coffee cup. And I thought his expression, the way he's standing, the little sliver of his watch we get to see. You can also see like his Leica hanging out on the side there. And then especially having the New York hat on, I thought it came together so beautifully. This guy was going by and he knew some of the other photographers that were out on the corner, and we were able to ask him to do a portrait. We had done quite a few photos of him just kind of like standing, and then I asked if he could get his hands involved because I loved seeing the tattoos on his hands. We ultimately went with this one, kind of like the fists together, which I thought came together nice. This girl stopped with a bunch of her friends. Again, at the end of the day, as I was wrapping up, I loved her tattoos. I loved her freckles. And same thing, we did a bunch of photos just kind of like hanging out, like kind of like with a vibe in front of the camera. And then I was like thinking back, there's like this Apple poster, a billboard on the background behind all the subjects. And seeing that kind of reminded me of some of those old Apple commercials, like iPod commercials. So I was like, what if you did some like dancing with the headphones? And she did that one, and I thought it came together. Like her arms look so beautiful with all the tattoos, and especially like how on her left arm there it kind of matches the freckles of her face. This one is actually this girl and this guy were walking by, and they were like using these bubble guns, like running through the intersection, like shooting at each other with bubbles. And I ran over and I was like, could I please make a photograph of you with the bubble machine or the bubble guns? And the guy was kind of hesitant, but the girl was like, sure, whatever. So I did get a photo of them together, which I think they really appreciated, but she was nice enough to actually give me a photo by herself. And I was like, what if you just hold it and then you're just like shooting it and we see the bubbles come out? So I thought that was a fun little like different thing. Like how often do you see people running around with bubble guns? This is my friend Quay, excellent street photographer here in New York City. He photographs a lot of street fashion. I think his edits are like top notch. I don't know what he does to actually edit his photos, but I think they always look so beautiful and so natural. And I'm absolutely obsessed. Huge fan of Quay's. It's another one where we did on a couple different poses, and then I was like, what if you put your camera, like you're holding your camera, and I think he kind of like, he interpreted it like that, where he put it on his shoulder, and it was one of those things where like what I was imagining couldn't have like come out better than what he thought of, and we put this together, and it's been one of my top favorite photos ever since we took it. This girl was walking by with her friend and her dog, and I think I just exclaimed how much I loved the dog. Growing up with the dachshunds as a kid, I just loved seeing them out in the wild. And yeah, so she stopped. She's like, "Can we get a photo of the dog?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so. Like, I could figure out how to make that work." But being that we were at 28 millimeters, like I would have had to have her like hold the dog out in a weird way to be able to photograph it properly. So we were kind of like struggling with that for a few minutes. Then I was like, you both look so incredible together in this picture. Would it be okay if I just made a photo of you holding the dog? And she was like, okay, okay. So I shot this one, and it ended up being one of my favorites. Her eyes met the camera, and the dog is kind of looking off like in disbelief that this is happening. And I thought it came together really nice. I think the colors are really pretty too. This guy was out with his friend, and I photographed his friend first, and I just kind of like saw him floating in the background, and I turned to him and I was like, are you interested in getting a photo too? And he's like, oh yeah, of course. And I was like, oh, thank God, because I had seen his eyes, and I was like, your eyes are so beautiful. And I was like, I was really hoping that you would agree to be photographed, because I thought it would stand out so much. And we did a couple different poses. Then I had him like moving his hands around, pulling on his rings, pulling on his bracelet, pulling on the collar, and that's how we got this photo. And then this is another one where like this girl came up, she wanted to be photographed. She said she was kind of like uncomfortable in front of the camera, so she was trying to figure out ways to kind of like break down that discomfort. So she started like putting her hands through her hair and kind of like dancing and moving in front of the camera in a way. And I think like this like smile, and then we get these catch lights in our eyes and it feels so engaging. And then her hair going through, hand going through her hair. I thought it all came together so beautifully, and it really stood out as a favorite. I did take the lighting setup over to the Leica store just last week and photographed a couple photographers outside of the store as they were going in for a Phil Penman show. And I thought they came out really nice. I photographed them with the Leica M246 monochrome and the 28mm 1.4. A little different, a little bit harder to photograph like that instead of being with the Q, where the Q is the autofocus and I can get like really precise focus and move pretty quickly. The rangefinder was a little bit harder, so I put the EVF on top and then focused it to minimum focus and just kind of like moved back and forth until I got focus on their eyes. And these are some of those. Thanks so much for watching. You can find out more about this project as well as any other work that I'm doing over on my website, SeanPBruce.com. You can also find me on Instagram at SeanPBruce. Thanks so much for watching.